She's a public speaker, freelance journalist, founder, Alliance for Cause, and third year law student. She's very passionate about journalism and interviewing people, and a, a very good public speaker. And today she will be conducting the show for us. So over to you, Carolina, and all the best, and to take us through the journey of how you give a memorable speech and how you deliver it. Okay.
Thank you, Yash. And hi, hello, and welcome again to the 182nd episode of Empowerment Talks. So, before I proceed, as usual, I am duty bound, and I would definitely fail if I do not introduce and welcome the entire audience, our family from the YouTube, and of course, our Zoom family. Thank you for constantly joining us every time we put up a show and making sure that you keep backing us with your support. We highly appreciate it, and that are our wheels which keep us moving. Thank you so much for joining. At this time, I also welcome all those who are going to watch this show later in the day because of time constraints, because this is going to be a YouTube live show and this will be recorded. So you can definitely go ahead and watch it later whenever time permits. So, moving forward, today we have a guest speaker who is the youngest that we've had so far. So, Anagha Rajesh stands as an 18-year-old youth activist. Now, out of all the speakers we've had, she is the youngest, and 18 years, however, seems too less for the profile that she holds. But, however, I am elated to announce that she is a passionate speaker, a voracious reader, and a youth leader with a passion to make a positive impact in society. She holds a competent communicator certification from Toastmasters International and is a TEDx speaker. She has delivered speeches at several national and international platforms and has secured prizes. Anagha is the co founder and chief of networking for Mind Chaps, a youth organization for mental health awareness. She is an advocate for the Girls in Science for SDGs platform under the aegis of the United Nations. In addition, she has a passion for Model United Nations conferences. Anaga's written work has been published on several platforms. She has been a part of the prestigious Thousand Girls, Thousand Futures mentorship program of the New York Academy of Science and is currently a young member of the Academy. In addition, she is a proud recipient of the Sheikh Hamdan Award and Sharjah Excellence Award for outstanding performance in academics and extracurricular activities. We, Anagha, today at Empowerment Talks are not only honored but are also privileged to have you on board and are really elated to know on what you have to share on this wonderful topic. So please join us on this virtual platform and take over from here. Over to you,
Thank you
Anagha.
so much, Carolina, for that lovely introduction. And many, many thanks to everyone who has joined us today. And I hope to share with you some things that I've learned throughout my journey so far, and hope to learn a lot from you as well through our interaction on this platform. So I've been public speaking for a while now, and I mean, I started when I was somewhere in middle school, and things have changed so drastically, and I'm so happy that I've been able to grow as a speaker, and this is due to the advices and the constant guidance of a lot of mentors and teachers. And throughout my journey, I have learned a couple of things about public speaking and how to keep your audience engaged. And that's exactly what I want to share with you today. So I'm going to summarize everything into 5 C's. So 5 C's to a memorable speech. The first C is capture. When I say capture, I mean capture your audience. You can look at the figure on the side and you can see that there's a magnet that's attracting people towards it. That's exactly how you as a speaker is supposed to be on stage. Now, when I say capture, you don't really need to do a lot of, it's not rocket science to capture audience at the end of the day. I would say capturing your audience starts with walking onto the stage with a smile on your face. That embraces the audience in your warmth and makes the audience want to listen to you. Now, it is said and it is scientifically proven that it is within the first 10 to 15 seconds of your speech that your audience sits down to decide whether they want to listen to the rest of your speech or are they going to mentally zone out. So it's the first 10 to 15 seconds of your speech that really, really matter. So now what do you do in these 10 to 15 seconds to make sure that your audience wants to listen to you throughout? There are three things that I usually use. One is to start off with a story. Start off with a story and pause at the exact moment when something exciting is going to happen. So, exactly like how it happens in these novels that come in sequels, the novel ends exactly at the point where you want to desperately know what's happening next. That's the point where you've got to stop your story, pause your story, then greet the audience, and then go on to give them what exactly is going to happen. So maybe you narrate. So, but I would say narrate a small part of your story at the start, pause at that suspense point, at the tipping point, and then go on to say, wish the audience, say, greet them, say good evening or good morning or hello, welcome, whatever greetings you want to give them, and then go on to the remaining part of the story. So your audience is definitely going to stay with you throughout that story. Second thing that I use to capture the audience is to ask a very pressing question. Ask a question to which people would want to know the answer for. Say, these can be questions for which you expect the audience to respond to you, or these are rhetorical questions. That depends on the context of your speech. If you've got a live audience in front of you, then you could definitely ask the audience how many of you in this room like so and so things. How many of you in this room, by a show of hands, can you tell me how many of you enjoy cricket? Or questions that relate to your speech. So if your speech is about cricket, then you're going to ask how many of you enjoy cricket, or you can ask how many of you support so and so team. That gets the audience kind of you jerk them up and wake them up and make them want to listen to you. And a third thing that I use is something called a shock factor. A shock or a surprise factor. You can call it a jaw-dropping element as well. So something you can go up on stage and you can deliver something, a very shocking statistic. Maybe say 80% of people living in UAE are obese. The kind of things that just jolts people and makes them want to know what you're going to talk about. Statistics which people don't expect, or facts which are not commonly known. So that's how you get to capture your audience. So I'll just quickly summarize it. One, come up on the stage with a smile. Two, uh, you can use any of you make use of the first 10 to 15 seconds of your time to make sure that your audience wants to listen to you. So you can do that by asking a jaw-dropping question, by giving a jaw-dropping fact, or by narrating a story. Now we'll move on to the second C of a memorable speech. Carolina, if you could please switch the slide. That is customize. Customize your content. This is the age of customization, as you know it. You've got customized gifts, you've got customized food, you've got customized clothes. Why not a customized speech? So it's super important to make sure you customize your content for your audience. But it's also equally important that you customize your content so that it suits your style of speaking. So there are a lot of speakers who are very humorous. So they should go on to make use of their humor factor. There are a lot of speakers who are very good at storytelling, and there are a lot of speakers who are very good at explaining things. So I believe speakers should make use of their plus points, their strengths, to customize the speech not only for the audience but also to your style. Now, your audience, when you say customize a content for your audience, that's really important, because when you are speaking to a group of high school students, or are you speaking to a group of 40-year-olds working in a corporate company, or are you talking to a group of senior citizens, it differs according to age as well as demographic, because what you speak about in a city in the United States may not be what an audience in rural India wants to listen to. So before you write your speech and before you start coming up with ideas for a speech, think of who is listening to you, because that's super important. You're speaking so that people can listen, so make sure you customize your content. Now, moving on to the next C of creating a memorable speech of building a memorable speech is create. So create methods to carry the message. When you speak, when you're giving a speech, there's a certain purpose to your speech. What do you want? What is your goal of writing and delivering the speech? Why do you want to write the speech? Why do you want to deliver the speech? So there's a certain meaning to your speech. So let's say that's your message. Maybe you want to inspire people to do something good for the environment, or maybe you want to motivate students to aspire higher, or you want to get across the fact that gratitude is important. Whatever is your message, create methods to keep emphasizing your message throughout the speech. So now when I am talking about uh, methods to carry the message, this could be that you have a certain a punch line to your speech which you keep repeating at regular intervals. For example, if you there was a time that I delivered a speech about the importance of coming together and working together. I was talking about collaboration. So my punchline was, give a handshake. All starts with a handshake. That was what my punchline was. So each time talk about some I talk about certain I finish a certain part of my speech, uh, uh, I used to I emphasize on this particular sentence, so that that sticks to people's minds. So when people go home after listening to your speech, what do they recollect from your speech? It's often these punch lines that people tend to remember and to want to retain. So have a punch line in your speech. That's one method to carry a message. Another method is to weave it into a story, and what usually works is a personal story. When you're talking about a personal story, it's not necessary that it in all its actuality happened to you. You have certain experiences in your life, you could just put them together and somehow relate it to the message that you want to give the audience. A lot of time what happens, even if it has not exactly happened to you, but of something has happened to somebody else, when you go onto a stage and put it as your experience, I mean, as long as it's not hurting anyone, or as long as it doesn't appear to be it doesn't appear out of the blue in your context, then it's absolutely fine to put together random incidents and connect them to your speech. And very often when it comes as your personal story, it has a lot of impact. So that's another method to carry your message to the audience. Another method that you could use to carry your message to the audience is by starting off your speech with a story, as I said before, and uh, end your speech with the same story, or end your speech with the remaining part of the same story, in the sense that it doesn't it doesn't appear to be it doesn't appear to be different from what you're actually speaking about, but it comes in the same flow. So as long as it's as your content is flowing, it's absolutely fine. And I have noticed that often when you start with a story and you go on to end with the same story, there are people who have come back to me a couple of months, even a couple of years later, saying you said that story that day on that stage. So that's the impact which when you weave a speech through your stories, that's the impact that that stories have on your speech. You can always think of various methods to carry your message to the audience. You can create different methods. You can have props to amplify your message, props that directly contribute to your speech. Maybe you're talking about money, and you can bring up a 10 dirhams note, a 10 rupee note, and do something with it, show it on stage, or you know have some visual aids with you so that people are able to grasp that better. Poetry helps a lot too in being able to carry the message. If you are someone who is passionate about poetry or who's passionate about reciting poetry, then go ahead and sprinkle your speeches with poetry. It's really going to make a difference. Now I'll move to the next C of for a memorable speech, which is communicate from heart to heart. When you think of a speech, it's you usually think of it as going from your mouth to many ears. If you can, when you start thinking about speeches as going from mouth to ear, what really happens is you start writing speeches and memorizing it and speaking out of your mind. When you speak out of your mind, I'm not saying don't use your mind while speaking, but what I'm trying to say is that use emotions. So when you narrate stories that have emotions, or you are giving out quotes that are emotional, you are giving out poetry that's emotional, or you are even there are some hand gestures which show that you are connecting to the audience. These are things that really matter, because when you communicate from your heart to somebody else's heart, they tend to retain your speeches for a really long time. Or if you're going to if even if your topic is not something that's very emotional, try to bring out some emotional quotients, some emotional content. If you're talking about, say, you're talking about obesity, you can always talk about, you can always say that you can always connect it to people, their families, and their health, to convey the message that you want people to eat healthy. Or if you're talking about, maybe is something related to the environment, you're talking about environmental pollution, you can always get to people, and you can always touch upon the emotional quotient of what does air pollution do to your lungs, what does it do to the lungs of those around you. Your family, when you talk about family, friends, and connect your speech to their lives and their families and their friends, it's going to make an impact for sure. And that's what I mean by communicate from heart to heart. Make sure that your speeches are emotional, in the sense that they connect to people's emotional side. Of course, you need to touch upon logic, you need to touch upon the scientific facts, you need to talk about the importance of a lot of things, but make sure that you script your speech in a way that it's a lot of it that we're not taking up a lot of make sure you script your speech in such a way that there's a good balance between emotion and logic, so that people are so that it goes in a flow, and also so that you are reaching out to your listeners, not just as listeners, but also as friends, and you're empathizing with them and you're encouraging them to empathize with you. So that's what I mean by communicate from heart to heart. So next time you have to deliver a speech, don't go ahead and write a speech which you've got to sit down and rote learn it, just mug it up and go out and spit it out on the stage. That somehow takes away the whole joy of giving a speech. So I would say, and to make sure that you wouldn't have to by heart your speech, make sure that your speech is mostly about personal incidents, about stories, about things you can relate to, about things that people can relate to. In that way, you wouldn't have to really memorize your speech. So maybe split your speech into three stories that connect to your final message, three incidents that connect to your final message. That makes a lot of impact. Now I'll move on to the final C of creating a memorable speech, and that's collect feedback. So this is something I put the C at the end to remind you that you need to be collecting feedback about your speeches right at the end of your speech. So when you go onto a stage to speak, you finish your speech, make sure that you go out to the audience and speak to them and find out what they liked about your speech and what they feel could have been better about your speech. You don't need, they don't the your audience need not be experts, but everybody who has been listening to your speech would have something valuable to add to your speech, to add to to talk about your speech. So all of your listeners, although they're listening to the same content, would have perceived it differently. I mean, in the same way that, a lot of people watching the same movie, they get different ideas about it. The same works with your speech. So what's happening is, if you are collecting feedback at the end of your speech, that's going to help you build better speeches in the future. And also, if you are delivering a prepared speech, make sure that you get a lot of people to listen to you speak before you actually go out on stage. And make sure that the people listening to you are people who genuinely want to help you. So they may be your friends, your family. Get them to listen to your speech and give you honest feedback. You can even you can even send across your script to people who might be able to read your speech and recommend things that could be better. But even when you're sending across a speech and you're getting it corrected or you're getting feedback on it, make sure that it doesn't get so edited that it goes away, that it takes away the essence that you really really wanted to share. So even when other people are giving feedback, make sure that you stick to your style so that it doesn't appear out of touch with you. And make sure that you and if you yourself want to practice your speech, you can you one thing that I said earlier, get your friends and family to listen to you and give you honest feedback. Or if you feel you want to see how you're going to be performing on stage, get yourself video recorded, stand in front of a device and speak and get it recorded and listen to it, and you can you yourself will know what parts of the speech you want to improve before you actually go on stage. And when it comes to impromptu speaking, you obviously can't do that. There's extempore, and there is the impromptu speaking. Or even if it comes to debating, a lot of times it's impromptu. So in that case, you won't be able to practice beforehand. But when you give quite a number of speeches which are prepared, a lot of times what happens is the things that you've spoken about before will come back to your mind. And there'll be stories that come to your mind, there will be quotes that come to your mind. Or even if nothing comes to your mind, start talking about how that particular topic affects you or affects your life, and that will automatically lead the chain of thought. So when you there are a lot of times when I have gone on stage, started speaking, and not been able to speak any further. You just blank out and you can't speak anything. That's happened to me a lot of times. And I gradually realized with the help of my mentors that that was happening a lot of times because I wasn't connected to the content that I was talking about. So I had written a good speech. I had, done all my research. I had gotten everything corrected. It's grammatically corrected. There are no errors. But I somehow am not connected to that content. And when I am not connected to the content, I don't think I will be able to get the audience to connect to it either. So that's what it is when it comes to impromptu speaking. So I'll just quickly recap to the 5 C's of delivering a memorable speech. One is capture your audience's attention. Two is customize your speech to suit your audience as well as to suit your style. Three is create content, create content that matters, and create means to get your message to the audience. Four, communicate from heart to heart. And five, collect feedback or keep constantly collecting feedback. And if you look at the picture that I've put on the side, especially for collect your feedback, you can see that there's a flurry of activities that are surrounding feedback. I purposely put it there to show you how important it is to get working on feedback. A lot of times you get real good. There are times when people don't give you good feedback, but that's completely okay. There'll be When you speak to a lot of people, there'll be at least a few people who give you genuine constructive feedback, and those are the feedbacks that you need to start working on. So that's it about creating a memorable speech. Now you can go ahead and ask me any questions that you may have.
Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, Carolina.
I don't think my video is popping up.
No, your video is here. I can see you.
I can't see. Oh, great. Okay. So thank you so much for beautifully driving us through these 5 steps, which were very interesting, and I'm pretty sure that it would have been definitely useful if it's put to practice. So now, if you're ready, can we please proceed with the Q&A session?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So for the first question, I would want to reiterate one of the C's that I think you have missed out. So, how important do you think confidence is while giving a speech? Because many people don't want to take that stage because of stage fear. So, they think that it's a huge obstacle that they have to cross, but unknowing that it might be something that's as easy as just going and just speaking like you normally speak. So, how important do you think confidence plays?
Okay, thank you for the question. I didn't put confidence into my presentation for one reason, so that it doesn't intimidate those who are listening to me. So, when I say confidence is one of the important factors of making a good, if I'm going to say that confidence is an important factor in making a good speech, then a lot of people might, immediately give up the idea of even wanting to give a speech because they feel they lack the confidence. So I feel confidence is something that comes with time. So the first time you go on stage, you're definitely not confident, and confidence is not a factor that is necessary for you to go on stage. You can go on stage and be as vulnerable as you want, and your audience would still love you because they're able to connect with you because of your vulnerability. So as long as it's not necessary that you walk onto stage and you look like you know everything. You don't need to look like you know everything. I mean, unless it's, of course, a debate or something where putting up a stance really matters. But when I'm talking about taking your first step into becoming a speaker, a confident, even if you don't have a lot of confidence, with whatever little confidence you have, you walk up and try it and do this over and over again, and you will gradually develop the confidence that you need to need to, is I mean, need to be able to deliver those high key speeches, as you call it. But there are a lot of times when you listen to certain speakers and you love their speeches because they are so vulnerable. They're talking about, how they're not giving out those very very confident vibes, but you still want to listen to them because that vulnerability is their strength. So, as I mentioned during my presentation, stick to your strengths and customize your speeches according to your strengths, and that's going to, take you a long way.
That's really true. Thank you so much for that insight as well. Now, moving on to the next question. But before I do that, if the audience have any question that you would want to ask the speaker directly, please put it up in the chat box. Or soon after I finish the Q&A session, I will ask you to raise your hands where y'all can even unmute yourself. So now going back to our Q&A session. So a thing that you mentioned, a problem that prominently occurs to almost everybody who climbs up on the stage is getting blank out all of a sudden. So we don't know what should the next step be that we should take. So what would you suggest on how we can overcome that situation? So if I suddenly get blank out into a stage, then what do I do to overcome it? How do I refrain from, stopping and giving a pause? So how can I overcome this?
Okay, so blanking out is something that has happened to me, a lot of times. And one thing that I do to stop myself from getting blanked out on stage is one, making sure that the content connects with me. So I usually, most of the time when I deliver speeches, it's usually about my personal experiences. I always try and connect my life experiences or stories that I know to the message, so that we so that I, even if I forget the exact lines that I wanted to say, I can still pick up from there because it's happened to me in my life, and that's something which is relatively easy to talk about. So if you're blanking out on stage when you're talking about something, you can immediately revert to some of your personal experiences and start talking about them. So, in that way, you can help calm yourself down, and you can ultimately relate this to your speech topic, as you progress. So, when you start talking, you'll keep getting ideas in your mind and you can proceed. That's one thing which I feel. Yeah, that's I think the key thing that you could do: connect it to your life or connect it to stories that you know, so that because stories always come out in a flow and you can easily keep track of them. So yeah, that's what I think you could do to stop blanking out.
Pretty sure that it will help if we put it to use. So now moving on. How important do you think a good content is to a speech? Because we've seen a lot of personalities, huge personalities, great speakers who come up with absolutely no content but still manage to put up a good show. And on the other hand, we have people who have amazing content, but however, their speaking skills aren't that good. So they don't emphasize on anything, but they convey what they want to. So, how important to you is content, and what are the tips that you would suggest to draft a good content?
Okay, so how important content is actually depends on the occasion you're speaking at, the stage you're speaking at, and the topic that you're bringing up. So, for instance, if you're talking for your, you're speaking at your high school farewell, you don't need to have a lot of content to keep yourself going. Just emotional cues are enough, and hilarious experiences are enough to keep you going. Even if it's not properly scripted, it doesn't make so much of a difference. But when it comes to going up on a stage like TEDx, or when it comes to going up on a stage where audience are there to listen to your content, then obviously scripting your content properly is very very important. So when as you said, there are a lot of people who come up on stage and get off with not having enough content. And a lot of times what happens is this is something that I've read about. I believe everyone knows Martin Luther King's speech, I Have a Dream. That speech was not prepared. He knew he had to give the speech, but he didn't have the time to prepare. And, he just went up there and he said, I have a dream. And that has, literally become a legendary speech. So, if you're leaving things to fate and walking up to stage, then it totally depends on your luck if your speech is going to click or not. But what hap if you are a beginner level speaker, I would say go up to the speech with at least 75% of your content properly prepared and structured in your mind and practiced so that you are not nervous. And when you get used to taking stages very often, it even if you go with maybe a 10% or a 5% level of preparation, also it can work. And when you think about people who have very well structured speeches and are not able to reach it out to the audience because their delivery style is not suiting the audience, then I think that these speakers who have very good content, they should go up and work on their style. So if you have a good content ready, then if you're going to work a little bit on your style, that's going to make a lot of impact. And usually, when content is good, people tend I would always say it is best to strike a balance between having good content and good delivery, because if you go to either side of the spectrum, it's not going to be that great. Okay, if you're presenting something like an academic paper and you have very good content, you're only then even if your delivery style is not that great, it doesn't matter. But when it comes to a stage where you're speaking to people and you're trying to entertain them or you're trying to inspire them, then your delivery style definitely matters. So when your question about how important content is, I cannot give you a very very clear cut answer, because it depends on the situation, it depends on the stage you're taking, it depends on the occasion, and it depends on the people you're speaking to. So depending on the occasion, you always need to strike a balance between your content and your delivery style.
That's really true. You need to have a balance between the two. So now moving on to the next question. In your profile, you have definitely given a lot of speeches on national and international platforms and have definitely gained a lot of experience and wins. So now, which, according to you, is the most memorable speech that you have given, and why would you choose that? So, which, according to you, is the most memorable speech that you have delivered on what platform?
Uh, okay, so I would say my first speech outside school. When I used to be in school, speeches were about, were just about standing still and, getting memorizing your content and going on stage and delivering it. I mean, when I was like in the younger grades, that's what kids are taught to do, right? The parents write a speech for you, you just memorize it, you go up to stage and speak. The first time that I went to speak outside school was for a competition. And it was like you get the topic 1 hour before the time, and you have to go and speak. And the topic was Mother's Day. Now we were all sitting in the room, all the participants are sitting there. I'm also there, and they give us 2 3 sheets of paper. Everybody starts writing frantically. Even I start writing frantically. I'm writing sentences, sentences, sentences. And when I'm called onto stage, I pick up my paper and go on stage. I have 2 3 sheets of paper, so I just grab all of them and go on stage. And what happens is I go there and then I forget which I can't find the starting of my speech because the papers got muddled up. I don't know where I'm supposed to start from. So I didn't know what to say. So I just started speaking from my mind. I was also so shocked. I'm speaking, but this is nothing out of what I had written for the past 1 hour. I had been writing for the past 1 hour. But I'm not delivering that speech. Instead, I'm saying what I feel like saying, and people are also listening to me. So I'm like, okay. And then, towards the end, I didn't know how to conclude. So I somehow managed to put up a poem. Like there were random recollections of 2 to 3 poems that came to my mind. So that somehow got put together into words, and I recited a poem and ended it. And what happened was, somebody who came up to me after the speech, apparently that man was trying to search for that poem on Google and couldn't find it. And he wanted to know what the name of the poem is. So that is the most memorable speech experience, not only because it's the first speech, but also because I was so shocked by how good being real is, and how good being authentic is, and how I learned how important it is to say what comes to your mind, and that comes out really well, because that's you being you. So that's going to make a lot of impact.
It's really true, and it seems like you're a born speaker. So, yeah, moving forward. And I'm pretty sure that that would have been one of the best impromptus you've ever given.
Yes.
Nice. Okay. So, moving ahead, what would you like to share about your experience and journey of being a TEDx speaker? So, 18 is a really young age, and I think I don't know whether that's the youth TEDx or the adult TEDx, but how do you feel on being a TEDx speaker, and how did this all start? So, how did you opt to choose that platform, and what did you share with it? So, if you could tell us something about it.
Yeah, this was a youth TEDx thing, and they were looking out for youngsters to speak. And what I shared there was a project, a nuclear tech based project that my friends and I had worked on. So I it would take quite a lot of time to actually talk about what I spoke about, but it was, so what we had actually worked on was a project which would help detect Alzheimer's at least 20 years before a person starts showing clinical symptoms of the disease. So this was the project that I was presenting there. And being on and I applied for it through my school, and I got selected. And what was I mean, when you talk about TEDx, it's like your speech going global. So that's something you've got to be very, very sure of something when you speak. So when you're scripting your speech, you keep going back to it and thinking about whether the global audience would be able to connect to what you're trying to say. So if you're trying to include certain cultural contexts, you choose not to, because because there are people across the world listening to you. So that's how TEDx is very, very different from when it comes to a live stage, because in a live stage you really know who's listening to you. You really know what kind of, you get immediate reactions from your audience. But this is something that's recorded and later sent for approval, and then goes up on the TED platform. So one thing was to making sure that the content connects with a global audience. Second thing was to make sure that, because my speech was very, very scientific, we had to make sure that the speech would appeal even to somebody who has the bare minimum knowledge in this field. So we had to, the speech had to be scripted in such a way that it doesn't dilute the importance of the scientific content that I'm talking about, and at the same time, it has to connect with an audience, with people who are maybe doing their PhDs in nuclear tech, and at the same time, people who barely know what nuclear tech is. So it's, you have to find the middle ground when you are uh, writing the speech. And of course, the TEDx curators were really very helpful in, we had at least 2 to 3 trial sessions where they would call in public speaking experts to come and listen to you and give you on the spot feedback on how you can make it better. And there were a lot of people. My English teacher was involved. There were also the curators were involved in, it was a collaborative speech writing and delivery thing. So that was very, very different from the other speeches that I've delivered. So yeah, that's how it went.
It's really interesting, and I'm pretty sure that your journey has just begun and that you're going to give many more TEDx speeches. So, moving forward, can you tell us what, according to you, a good speech should contain in like just few lines? So, what would you sum up a good speech to contain? Like, it should connect with the audience, or expressions, or what, according to you, constitute and make a speech good?
So one would be your speech should make your message clear. So your speech should have a purpose. That's what I would say is the first key to a good speech. When if you're going to randomly put together incidents or randomly put together stories, the audience will not be able to take away meaningful content. So what's important is that your speech should have a purpose. Second is that you should be able to make your message clear to your audience. So you need to be, when you're writing a speech and when you're delivering a speech, it's quite different. There's a certain level of difference, because when you're writing, you tend to use a certain type of language, and when you're speaking, you can't be using very long sentences. If I'm going to speak in very long sentences, by the time I finish a sentence, people would have forgotten what I said at the start of the sentence. So your language should be listener friendly. That's what I would say. So one, your speech should have a purpose. Two, your speech should be your speech language should be audience friendly. Third, I would say voice modulation. When if you're going to speak at an even tone, it's going to make, when you're listening to something, what gets you picked up, what makes you want to listen is it deflections in sound. So if you're not going to have voice modulations, it's going to become too monotonous, even for someone who genuinely wants to grasp your content. So I would say voice modulation. And voice modulation is not something that comes automatically. I mean, you need to put in a lot of effort to get that going. So in your first set of speeches, even if you even if you're not able to modulate your voice as much, don't be very worried, because that's something that comes with practice. Even like really experienced speakers, I've had my mentors, they telling me that even they find it hard to get a hold on voice modulation a lot of times. So that's something which comes with practice. I would say the fourth thing is pause, which is very important in a speech. I mean, it's something that's often neglected when it comes to pauses, because if you're speaking, you know what you're speaking. You have practiced it million times, so you for sure know what you're talking about. But that's not the case with the audience. So unless you give meaningful pauses, it will not help the audience at all. So if the audience has to be able to grasp your message, if the audience has to be able to imbibe what you're really trying to say, you need to give appropriate pauses. And at the same time, if you're going to give too many pauses, it'll look like it'll look like you're confused. So you need to strike a balance between having meaningful pauses and having too many pauses. That the balance should be there. And the fifth thing I would say is the speaker should be enjoying what he or she is saying. that's something I've sensed a lot of times. Speakers have very good content, they have very good delivery, but there's often a disconnect between the audience and the speaker, because the speaker is not, what speaker is saying is not connecting to the person himself or herself. So if I am saying something, I should be able to connect to it first, and I should be able to enjoy the whole experience. That's when I can transfer those vibes to the audience. So I would say five things to have very important in a speech. One is the purpose of your speech. Two is your voice modulation. Three is pauses. Four is the fact that the speaker is enjoying the speech and wants to take it to the audience. And I think I missed out on a point that I said earlier. Uh, yeah, that should be it.
Okay, but that was really beautifully well explained. And I'm pretty sure that that acted as an extension to your speech in the beginning. So that completed your entire session. So now, before I proceed to the last question, if the audience have any question that you want to ask personally to the speaker, please put it on the chat box, or you can even raise your hands and unmute yourselves. So now, lastly, what do you think about empowerment talks and about this entire organization that's trying recklessly to empower people through their talks? So what do you have to say about empowerment talks?
So, firstly, when I was invited to empowerment talks, I was kind of surprised, because it's me usually getting to experts and requesting them to speak at events, maybe at school, or for mind champs. But it's like there's someone who's messaging me on LinkedIn and asking me if I can come as a guest speaker at something called the empowerment talks. I was very, very excited, and I was very honored. And that's when I looked up empowerment talks on Insta, on LinkedIn, and I realized that what you are doing through the empowerment talks is really, really meaningful. You're getting people from different walks of life to share their experiences, and that's really important, especially because we are living in very unprecedented times. And in these times, being able to share information, being able to collaborate through ideas is very important. Even though physical borders are closed, we are trying to open up those, we are trying to virtually open up uh, ideas. We are really letting ideas flow through this platform. And I think this is a wonderful job that you're doing. And the fact that all of you are working or studying full time, and yet being able to do these talks so consistently, even on working days like today's Tuesday, we're still doing it. And that shows the level of commitment that you have towards making ideas and knowledge accessible to people, and to empower them with the skills needed to you know skills needed to build keep their lives going, or to build a better life. So the work that you're doing is commendable, and I'm really, really grateful for this opportunity, for giving me a platform to speak and to share my ideas.
I'm actually surprised that this has been the first platform to invite you as a speaker, because for a person of your personality and caliber, you're going to see many more stages. And we wish you all the best for all your future endeavors too. So now
Thank you.
I think, yeah, and I think Mr. Khan has a question to ask. So can you please unmute yourself, sir? We can move on to the question and session answer session from the audience. So please unmute yourself and ask the question, sir. Mr. K. Khan? Khalid Khan, I believe.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
you're
yes,
audible.
Excellent. First of all, thank you very much. Is it Anagha?
yes, I'm Anagha.
Anagha, thank you for a wonderful session. Really, really enjoyed it. Wonderful pearls of wisdoms, some really, really good tips. And more importantly, I think you mentioned one thing we tend to forget a lot about in talking is the emotion side. If you feel emotional about something, that emotion can be shared with many others. So if you look at lots of films, any films, Bollywood, Hollywood, the tear-jerking moments tend to be because the actors feel emotion, and that emotion can transmit far and wide. So emotions are quite important. I guess my question for you would be this idea, which you haven't mentioned, which I'm a big fan of, and I guess in TED Talks especially, but other platforms, I guess because of time constraint, they don't do. How do you feel about interactivity? Do you prepare any speeches where you interact with the audience?
Thank you so much, sir, for your comments and for your question. But it would be great if you could rephrase your question because I am not very clear about what you're trying to ask me.
Sure. So, in any speech that you have delivered, have you ever interacted with an audience? So, let me give you an example. If you said, "Look, when I was at school, I had two options. I could do science, or I could do, I don't know, the arts. Which do you think I chose?" So, have you ever done any interactivity with the audience via your speaking engagements?
Yes, I do interact with the audience during speeches. I often ask the audience to, by a show of hands, can you tell me how many of you have done so and so thing? Or there was a time when I did a speech and I asked all the audience, I was trying to drive home a message about leadership, and I got the audience to stand up, to clap, and there were around around 200 plus audience, and I asked them to stand up and clap and sit stand, they were all seated, so I asked them to stand up, to clap. I was trying to drive home a message about leadership. So that helped me get the audience warmed up and at the same time super engaged in my speech. So I think
Excellent.
interacting with the audience is something that's very important when it comes to speaking to very huge audiences.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Really, really good answer and insightful lessons.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for your question. And the next person who's raised his hand up is Mr. Santosh. So, Sir Santosh, can you please unmute yourself and proceed with the question?
Hi, Anga. Thank you so much for your amazing content and everything. So my question is not directly related with speech, but sometimes it happens that the topic we are going to talk on, there is someone from audience